It seems like just yesterday that I was scripting the best games of 2022 list, but we're back with another one. As is tradition, I will be rating the top 10 games I played this year. And again, keep in mind that the game didn't have to release this year, I just have to have beaten it this year. A few ground rules though. First, no DLC. DLC is part of the original game and I don't feel okay ranking it alongside other games. Secondly, no Rivals of Ether. Rivals is a game that I consistently play, and a game that is constantly being updated with new characters via the workshop, so I won't be ranking it here. And as usual, the further we get on in the list, the more I'll have to say about the game, because I just want to gush about the game more, so the list will be very bottom heavy, especially when we get to the top 3. Furthermore, for the games I've already made reviews on, I'm going to be saying a lot less, since I've said everything that needs to be said in those reviews. One final rule is that I have to have beaten the game by December 18th. Other than that, let's get started. I'm an unashamed fan of Persona 5. Yes, it's got flaws that I'm willing to point out, but still, the game holds a special place in my heart despite of those flaws. I really enjoyed the cast of Persona 5 to the point where I'd be down if Persona 6 never came out and Atlus just made Persona 5 spin-offs for the rest of time. And Persona 5 Tactica is another game in the long list of Persona 5 spin-offs. With the place Persona 5 holds in my heart, it's kind of surprising that it's this low on the list, but the games higher up are just that much better. Plus, I think this game is the weakest of the Persona 5 spin-offs I've played. Let's start off with what the game did right, the story and the characters. The Phantom Thieves are always fun to see again, and I really love watching them interact. Seeing them again was the whole reason I was so excited for this game, so it was fun to see their personalities again. This game honestly made me have a higher appreciation for Ryuji as a character. I think he's a lot funnier in this game than he ever was in the original Persona 5. Of course, the rest of the thieves I pretty much retain the same opinion on. Futaba's my cringe daughter. I hate every nerdy reference that comes out of her mouth, but I still can't help but enjoy the character. And Yusuke and Haru are great as always. Makoto's still her boring self, and Morgana is Morgana. The two new characters are amazing as well. I love Toshiro and Irina's arc throughout the whole game, and the themes of full-scale revolutions really expand on the themes that Persona 5 set up. I enjoyed watching Toshiro grow over the game, and their interactions with each other and the thieves were funny, and they got the most heartfelt character moments in the game. That being said, I do think they take up a bit too much of the spotlight. Thieves do get their moments, especially with Futaba, which I really enjoyed, but for most of the game's story, they get relegated to background characters as it focuses on Toshiro and Irina, and I understand that the thieves went through their arcs already in Persona 5, but I don't know, I would have liked to see more of them, akin to Persona 5 Strikers. I do like how the plot is centered around Toshiro as a character. It feels a lot more personal than in Persona 5, and the stakes are much less up until the final dungeon. The music is once again on point. Persona 5 music is always banger, and this game leans heavily into the rock aspect of the soundtrack rather than the jazz aspect. Of course, whenever Lynn's vocals come in, the soundtrack really pops off. They're the standout aspect of the soundtrack. The visuals take a bit of getting used to. It's not really a deal breaker for me, it's fine, but it makes some of the emotional moments in the game a lot goofier due to the chibi art style. I would have loved to see this game in the same art style as Persona 5, akin to Persona 5 Strikers. That being said, it's not really that big a deal, and it didn't bother me too much during my playthrough. My problem with Persona 5 Tactica is the gameplay. Don't get me wrong, I like the gameplay, but I think it could use some work, and it isn't as fun as Persona 5 or Strikers. First of all, there's no explorable overworld. It's either cutscenes where characters come in and out of the frame, similar to cutscenes in The World's End With You, or it's tactics battles. There's no overworld to explore, nothing to do outside of battles. That being said, the battles are fun. I do enjoy maneuvering and getting into the right position for attacks. But I also think that Persona 5 Tactica's battle system is slightly weaker than the other game in this XCOM style genre I've played, Mario plus Rabbids. The maneuverability in Mario plus Rabbids between the dashes and the boost jumps makes the XCOM style gameplay that much more fun than it is in Tactica. That isn't to say that Tactica's gameplay is bad. I had a lot of fun with it, and of course the Persona system is really good, but I just feel like the battles are slower paced than in Mario plus Rabbids, and I don't like it as much. Also, Akechi. He's here. He costs extra money, but it's a small price to pay for Goro Akechi. All in all though, Persona 5 Tactica is a really good game. I have grievances with it, just like Persona 5 and Strikers, but the good far outweighs the bad, and I had a lot of fun seeing my precious Phantom Thieves again. However, this game does have some glaring flaws, and for that I can't bring myself to rate it any higher. 2D Mario's been in kind of a stasis. Yeah, sure, new Super DS kind of revived 2D Mario, but after that, it just became repetitive. In a sense, Super Mario Bros. Wonder is everything I want out of a 2D Mario. It's expressive with more charm than any previous 2D Mario game, with a unique art style and animations for each character that make the characters feel more alive than ever. The new voice work takes a bit of getting used to, but Kevin Afghani fits the role of the brothers amazingly, and does a great job capturing Charles Martinet's portrayal. The game is very charming, even outside of the characters' animations, and it does a lot with the Mario franchise instead of playing it safe like in the new Soup series. It's a breath of fresh air. The game is also lots of fun, with each level throwing something new at you, from both the level gimmicks to the wonder effects. However, each level introduces its concepts to you in a safe area, like Nintendo games are really good at doing. Each level builds upon its concepts, and the game never stays on one concept for too long. The badge system also makes the game super replayable, and I can see a bunch of different possible challenge runs of this game with the badges. And I can't go without mentioning the talking flowers, which gave the game a unique identity and were charming. I do have a few problems, mostly related to the boss fights, and I do think that indie platformers, especially games like Celeste, are more fun and better designed, but it's always fun to play some good old-fashioned Mario goodness, and with the personality this game has, it seems that Nintendo is finally letting go of the sterilized image of the Mario franchise, and is taking risks with the brand, and I can't wait to see where they go with this. Have you ever wanted a game to break your heart repeatedly? Well then, Witch's Heart is the game for you. The story of Witch's Heart is easily the selling point. It's captivating to figure out not only what's going on, but also to experience it as it happened. The events that occur in the game are honestly heartbreaking, as you have to watch Claire, a poor innocent girl, be brutally murdered over and over. You keep going into the next route and the next route, hoping that something, anything will change. Yet each and every time, you're met with Claire being murdered, especially in Noelle's route of the base game, where it seems like everything is going to be alright, but then... No! This is after you've already gone through 3 routes of Claire being murdered over and over again, so you'd hope that something would change, and it doesn't. Even in the conclusion chapter, it doesn't end with a perfect bow on the top, as Noelle doesn't escape the mansion. And of course, this story wouldn't be so good without its stellar cast of characters, namely the main 5 occupants of the mansion. Each one is amazing in their own right, yes, even you, Ash. And watching their dynamics and their character motivations is really what drives the plot forward to the tragic conclusion in each character's route. I like how the game switches perspectives between the characters, even when it's not in their route, and the little transition is pretty charming. It gives each of the characters ample time to develop, even outside of their own route. Of course, some characters are better than the others, my favorite being Claire, who's just a precious girl who doesn't deserve any of the tragedies that befall her over the course of the game, which is what makes each ending hit so much more. The game also has heavy transgender messages, the most overt being Noelle, who is literally a trans man, but Claire herself also expresses heavy transgender symbolism, especially with the pure euphoria she has around wearing a dress. Noelle and Claire are my favorite T4T couple. The music is great despite being royalty free, it slaps, and the character art in the CGs are well done and cute. The game isn't without flaws, and that's almost entirely within the gameplay side. Occasionally the game will stop you from progressing in the story in order to force you to do these menial tasks around the mansion, and this honestly only exists to pad out the game, and I dread it whenever it happens. It stops the flow of the story dead in its tracks for you to do boring stuff throughout the mansion. Also, it's sometimes hard to know exactly where to go, even with Ziesel's hints. Sometimes you just have to wander around and hope you run into the right room. The combat is also a bit bare bones, but that's to be expected since it's an RPG Maker game. But to be honest, if you're going into Witch's Heart expecting a well-designed video game, you're approaching the game wrong. The main focus and the enjoyment I got out of the game is through the story and characters, and I recommend powering through the tedium of the gameplay in order to experience this amazing story. Recently, we've seen the rise of the spiritual successor in the indie space, games that borrow from now defunct franchises or gameplay styles while using their own characters. And no other game does this more than Pizza Tower. I've never played a Wario Land game before. I've heard great things about them, but I've never got the chance to play one. However, after playing Pizza Tower, I don't think it'll be possible to go back to any Wario Land game due to how much fun Pizza Tower is. The way Peppino controls is absolutely insane, and while it can get a bit of getting used to, and I'm still far from mastery of the game, it's a lot of fun to run around, string together long combos, and just go fast. The best part of Pizza Tower is easily the level design, each level throwing something new and fresh at you, forcing you to stay on your toes, but also providing unique gameplay variety that is able to change the way you play the game, but also fits perfectly with the gameplay of Pizza Tower without breaking the flow too hard. The levels themselves were perfectly designed around Peppino's moveset as well as the gimmick, and take full advantage of both to reward precise platforming and exploration of each level. The escape sequences are just the cherry on top of each level, with them often incorporating the level gimmick into them, but this time the gimmick is turned on its head, as you now need to perform it as fast as possible. These escape sequences act as timed tests of what the level taught you, as well as providing a hectic dash through the level, often entering in buzzer beater finishes in my playthrough. I do have a bit of complaints about the boss fights, as I don't think the game was designed with the boss fights in mind, and I feel like the difficulty is turned up to 11 during them. It might just be a skill issue on my part, but having bullet hellish attack patterns alongside Peppino's slippery controls just wasn't fun for me. The visual and audio design, especially with the music and character art, is very reminiscent of like old school YouTube poop, so I really enjoy it. It's a wacky art style and concept that fits with the gameplay, and the characters are extremely well animated. The music incorporates Naganuma style sampling, and it honestly goes hard, with tracks such as Yeehaw Delivery Boy being a standout. All in all, Pizza Tower takes from Wario Land, but also puts a unique spin on the formula, creating fun levels and addicting gameplay. However, it's just a bit too slippery to control for my liking, as I prefer the more precision platforming in games like Celeste when it comes to 2D platformers. So for that reason, Pizza Tower can't get any higher on my list. Yeah, you knew this one was coming, but you didn't expect it so soon, did you? But that just goes to show how enjoyable I found the games further up on the list, because this game is honestly a masterpiece and deserves all the awards it will inevitably win. The main draw of Tears of the Kingdom for me is just how fun it is. The most fun you can get from this game is from building wacky contraptions or solving puzzles in ways they weren't intended to be solved. When you figure out a solution that uses the tools you're given in a unique way that feels unintended, it feels like you're a fucking genius. Tears of the Kingdom makes you feel smart, like you're breaking the game, when in reality, all this jankiness is what the devs intended. The physics engine is working overtime and is one of the best in any games I've ever played. It's really fun to see how each object interacts with Ultra Hand, Fuse, and your other abilities. The exploration is also really good because it basically does what Breath of the Wild did and did more of it. I'm normally not a fan of open world games, but Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are the exception to this. It's a lot of fun to explore Hyrule and see what you can discover, and there's secrets hidden in every nook and cranny. I do have some issues with the exploration, namely the depths, because I wish that the depths were a bit more fleshed out and had their own shrines and stuff instead of the light routes. I also really like the emphasis on the plot that this game has, at least compared to Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild really suffered in the plot department because of how the game was designed, but with Tears of the Kingdom, they were able to craft a plot that allowed the player to explore Hyrule however they saw fit, while at the same time telling a cohesive story. My one gripe is that the Dragon Tier memories could be done out of order, which makes it really easy to see the big twist of the game early in your playthrough. I would have made them have to be activated in order, which would go against the spirit of the game, but having one quest that's like that isn't that bad in my opinion. However, the big twist itself is amazing and tragic, and the final boss is a fucking spectacle. The game does a good job having in-universe unexplained lore through environmental storytelling, however, which Breath of the Wild also did, and I really enjoyed that in both games. The dungeons are very okay, the shrines are really, once again, where all the focus is on, and the shrines are great and a lot of fun, but the dungeons themselves are just a bit tedious. Not as bad as the Divine Beasts in Breath of the Wild, but they aren't anything great. And the sage vows you get from completing them aren't good at all. Using their abilities are clunky and they tend to just get in the way. I do want to see the old style of Zelda dungeons come back in any new game they make, where you can get more parts of your moveset as you proceed throughout the game instead of getting it all right at the start. I don't know how you do that while also keeping the open world style of the game, but I'm sure Nintendo can come up with a way. All in all, Tears of the Kingdom is a fantastic game, a fun but also artistic masterpiece. However, it is flawed at several points, and I'm not going to pretend it's the perfect game. That being said, I enjoyed it immensely, and that's why it's this high up on the list. Everyone's favorite funny Twitter man, Hideki Naganuma, is back at it again. This time, the game in question is Bomb Rush Cyberfunk, a spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio. Now, I always was a fan of Jet Set Radio's music and visual flair, but not so much the gameplay, because I played the awful Steam port of the original game. However, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk really fixes a lot of the problems I had with Jet Set Radio. The controls are tighter, the trick system is fun as hell to pull off, and it's fun to transition between running and skating. As I stated in my review, it's addicting to try out the combos and see how high of a high score you can get, or how long you can keep a combo going. I do have one gripe with it, and that is that the game lacks any sort of in-game leaderboard. I think it'd be neat to have some sort of high score tracker in the game, or even like a player ghost system where you can copy a combo from another player or something. But other than that, the game is really fun. It's fun to skate around and hit places with your spray can, and going out of the way to find the out-of-reach ones. But again, the most fun just comes from fucking around and performing tricks. The visual and musical style is out of this world. It's got that urban vibe that Jet Set Radio was known for, with the big, sprawling cities in both day and nightlife before you. The world design is fun to look at. The characters all have this PlayStation-era model vibe, which I really live for. And of course, you can't mention Jet Set Radio without mentioning the music, and it fucking delivers. Of course, you have Naganuma, who brings the standout tracks, but the other artists don't pull their punches. All in all, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk is the perfect evolution of the Jet Set Radio formula, the visuals and musical style intact while making the game more fun than ever before. The only thing that really keeps it out of the top 3 is that I just prefer the other games more. Danganronpa! You ever heard of it? I assume you have because you're subscribed to this channel. You are subscribed, right? Despite its flaws, I'm a big fan of the series, so I was really looking forward to Raincoat, a game made by the same development team. I finally got my hands on it over the summer, and what were my thoughts? I liked it a lot. It was a unique twist on the Danganronpa formula that changed enough but was familiar enough to be fun. The cases are solid, although I prefer a lot of the Danganronpa cases more. The cases in Raincoat are still fun to solve and work through. However, my favorite case is the final one, which isn't even a murder case. For once in a Kodaka game, the overarching plot was more interesting than each case by case. I really liked the strange twist into the zombie genre the game took towards the end, and I really enjoyed the overarching story about the homunculi. And the whole pink blood twist at the end fucking blew my mind. I love it when game developers take something they've established as a central part of their game's identity, that being the pink blood in Danganronpa, and makes it a central part of the story to provide a plot twist to the player. I honestly got hyped towards the end when I figured it out, before it was explicitly said, and it felt like a Jimmy Neutron brain blast moment, and it was fun to play through. The art style was great. I really enjoyed the design of the world and the characters. They really stuck out with unique designs. The characters were great too. They were pretty hit or miss, with characters like Shinigami and especially Desuhiko being very bad. But when the characters hit, they hit hard. Halara is easily the sleeper pick for my favorite in the game. Their design goes crazy and I love their personality, although I do wish they got more development. Yuma, Makoto, and Vivi are the standout highlights of the story that everyone and their mother loves, and for good reasons. I especially enjoyed Makoto's character. Figuring out his motivations was a highlight for me. Overall, Raincoat was a really fun experience and brought me back to the old days of playing Danganronpa for the first time, and I really enjoyed that. I can't wait to see if Kodaka makes a sequel. When I play video games, I'm very different to most people. While most view video games in what the tin says, that being that they're games, I tend to appreciate video games as an art form, especially in terms of the story. Of course, as a game designer, I know that gameplay and fun factors should always come first, but you'll always find more story-rich games topping my favorite games of the year list. That goes to show just how fun and addicting Neon White is. It's a game that I slept on at first, and I didn't play when it came out, but once I heard some things about it from my friends, I picked it up and was surprised at just how much fun it is. Legitimately, the only thing I dislike about this game is the writing, because these are some of the most insufferable characters I've ever had the displeasure to meet. Besides Mikey. Everybody loves Mikey. But the gameplay more than makes up for it. Because holy shit, the game is addicting. The core gameplay, grabbing and using the cards either to shoot or to use their specific ability, is cool, and the movement is extremely tight and fun to control, and using the abilities is loads of fun. But the main draw of the game, and what keeps me coming back, is the gameplay loop. Neon White is a game that incentivizes and teaches you how to get better at speedrunning, which is a hobby that I've always wanted to get into, but has such a high barrier of entry that I haven't really gotten into it. However, with Neon White, the game incentivizes speedrunning, both through its progression and its level design. Each level has a built-in and intentional skips, but also has more unintentional skips that are harder to find or require tech that isn't specifically taught to you. Each level is tightly designed so that it feels mechanically sound and yet easy to break. The game's constantly throwing new mechanics at you too, so it doesn't get stale. The online leaderboard is hacked, which makes it more feasible to do speedruns, since instead of comparing yourself to thousands of people, you're only comparing yourself to a few friends. It's fun to go through each level and try to get the best time you possibly can and beat your friends. It incentivizes you to find ways to shave just one more second. Sometimes I can spend multiple hours on a single level, finding a route, grinding it out to the extreme, and then finding a brand new, faster route just to save one more second. It's honestly addicting to try to get as high of a time as humanly possible, and I could go back to this game over and over and still not have perfected it, but a time save always seems just within reach, and that's what makes Neon White so fun. From a gameplay standpoint, Neon White is probably the most fun game I played this year. However, 2 games were still able to beat it. Undertale is my favorite video game of all time. I will keep stating that until the end of time. The game means so much to me, and I love it so much. However, I never got super involved with its fandom when I was younger. I knew the basics, like the AUs and stuff, and I kind of found them a bit cringy, but now I'm kind of nostalgic for them, and just in time, a full-length fan game that's been in development for 7 years came out at the beginning of December. Undertale Yellow. Now, normally I would not count any Undertale fan games as part of this list, as Undertale fan games are usually just one fight. However, Undertale Yellow is a full-length fan game. It's comparable in length to Undertale itself. It's incredible how much work went into this game and how creative the developers and Undertale fans as a whole are. Props to the developers for continuing to work on this even after Undertale stopped being as relevant. I've only played the pacifist route at the time of writing, but I also watched a video of the neutral route and plan to play the no mercy route. However, despite only experiencing part of the game, Undertale Yellow still makes it to number 2 on my list. Undertale Yellow is a fan-made prequel to Undertale starring the human that fell down before Fritz, the human of justice. As such, it has the tough job of keeping the gameplay and multiple routes of Undertale, while also not messing up any of Undertale's existing routes. It does this by focusing on a brand new cast of characters instead of the ones you've already seen. It does make mention to some of the characters and what they were doing at the time the game takes place, but it doesn't put a major focus on any of them, and they only appear for brief amounts of time aside from Flowey. I really like this approach because it lets me get attached to the new cast of characters, but I also go, wow, it's them, whenever I see something I recognize. This makes the game seem to be canon, to the point where I consider the pacifist route of Undertale Yellow to be canon to Undertale lore, despite it not actually being canon. And that is because the characters and story are so well written. The story is a lot more personal than Undertale, more being about specific characters and their circumstances, instead of being about the fate of humans and monsters like Undertale is. The characters are well written with motivations, flaws, things that drive them. The main casts like Martlet, Jerboa, and my favorite, North Star, are the highlights, but like in Undertale, even the minor characters and the enemies have motivations and things driving them. Their motivations and their relationships with Clover, the protagonist, are really what drive the story forward and make it so heart-wrenching, especially towards the end. Of course, the game is also hilarious. The game knows when to crack jokes and when to be serious and somber. Every corner of the game there's something funny, something to laugh at. It's fun to examine every item and NPC in every room multiple times just to see what it says. The writing captures Undertale's writing better than any other Undertale fan game I've seen. It feels like Toby Fox actually made this game, and the same can be said about the art style and music. The art style is exactly like Undertale's with the black and white battle and the colorful overworld, but the boss fights really spruce things up with its art, especially the backgrounds, and I enjoyed seeing the backgrounds in every fight. The Flowey boss fight in the neutral route takes on several different art styles, and it's amazing. The music is also all bangers. While not on the level of Undertale or Deltarune in my opinion, they're still amazing tracks, and it feels like Toby Fox himself made them. My favorite things about Undertale Yellow are twofold. The first are the new areas in the underground. In Undertale, there are many places you just never get to visit that you can see in the background of areas. For example, the city in New Home, or the areas off the cliff in Snowden. Undertale Yellow actually takes you a completely different path through the underground, introducing new sections of familiar areas, as well as completely new areas such as the dunes. It makes the underground seem that much more lively, with vast and sprawling landscapes and inhabitants. An entire civilization that is always developing with new technology. It makes the underground into a living, breathing place, unlike in Undertale where it kind of just felt like a hallway. That's another reason why I consider Undertale Yellow to be canon, because it makes the underground so much more alive, and I can come up with so many new fan plots in the areas crafted by the Undertale Yellow team, as well as the new areas opening the opportunity to design new areas that aren't in either Undertale or Undertale Yellow in future fan projects. My other favorite thing about Undertale Yellow is Clover. Unlike Frisk, who doesn't get much character development since you're controlling them the whole time, Clover actually has a whole character arc, especially through the pacifist route. They make decisions on their own and have so much more of a personality than Frisk, with several unique animations that show their character. And of course, there's the ending of the pacifist route, where Clover sacrifices themselves to become another soul for the monsters, for their friends. This was tragic, but it really brought Clover's character full circle, and it fit the themes of justice in the game. Clover believes that sacrificing themselves, freeing the monsters, is the just thing to do, and it's just saddening. To watch them make the ultimate sacrifice, it legitimately brought me to tears. Well done. There's one thing I dislike about the game, and that's the battles. Don't get me wrong, the battles are fun. I like all the gimmicks that all of the boss fights introduce, and it makes the game unique and provide different styles of gameplay. My favorite one was in the fight with Axis. It's fun to bounce his attacks back at him. However, the game is extremely hard. I've only completed the pacifist route, and I hear that the No Mercy route is even harder, so I'm dreading it. I will admit that it pissed me off at many points, and the boss fights took me up to or over an hour to beat, especially the final boss. Difficulty is good, don't get me wrong, but I feel like having an option to make it easier would be nice, because this game is brutal, to the point where I feel like it discourages newcomers. Besides that though, Undertale Yellow is a really good game. I loved exploring the underground through a whole new lens, with a whole new story and characters to fall in love with. While it doesn't hold the same place in my heart as the original game does, I still think it's amazing and the best Undertale fan project of all time. Is what I would say if Chara was in the game. Chara does not appear in the pacifist route, and someone in my Twitch chat told me that they don't appear in the No Mercy or neutral routes either. 0 out of 10, worst game of all time. I am Chara IRL. I can't believe I'm saying this, but my favorite game I played this year is surprisingly a fan game. I think fan games should be examined just as valid as games in their original IPs. Sometimes fans can make games that are better than their original franchises, and I've had a while to think since I finished this game, and I think that Super Danganronpa Another 2, a fan game by Lineage, might be better than every single Danganronpa game besides maybe V3. I cannot underestimate how much this game does better than Danganronpa, but at the same time, I also think it should be examined as its own story. Yes, the gameplay and basic formula is tied to the Danganronpa series, but as you know from the 3 Danganronpa fan stories I've made, I find the Danganronpa formula to be very compelling, but I feel like the writers never took full advantage of it. For me, Super Danganronpa Another 2 not only capitalizes on the Danganronpa formula, it makes it amazing. I'm about to get into full spoilers, so please play this game. It's free and it's honestly great. By having the mastermind revealed at the beginning, but also having several traitors revealed over the course of the story, as well as keeping the extent of the mastermind's plan a secret, but revealing it little by little over the course of the story instead of all right at the end, the game feels like it makes the Danganronpa formula even better. It gives the cast an active threat to fight against, while also keeping enough mystery to keep the player guessing, even maybe more so than in Danganronpa. It also gives the cast a significant dynamic change than in the traditional Danganronpa, because in the original series, characters, while knowing any one of them can kill, still act like friends. Having the voids hidden among them, the characters are a lot more distrustful of each other, which makes the bonds the characters do form such as Sora with Yoriko and Yuki, more compelling because they're trusting each other to tell each other's secrets despite knowing that void exists among them. It also builds time for characters to have conflict with each other, such as Emma and Kokoro. The writing feels like it's an official Danganronpa game. The game knows when to have funny moments, but also knows when to play it completely serious. The game knows how to write conflicts that center on not only the plot in its entirety, but also its characters. While the humor does show some of the traditional Danganronpa bullshit, especially looking at you, Yuri, I feel like it's held back a bit compared to the bullshittery that goes on in the Danganronpa series. Furthermore, the game balances it out with compelling scenes all throughout the game, not just at the end like in Danganronpa 1 and 2. The scenes where the voids are revealed, and the reveal of Kanade's true nature, literally everything to do with Mikado, Lineage knows how to make these characters shine, and every single character gets a moment in the spotlight, unlike in Danganronpa where half the cast is ignored. Lineage knows how to make me cry, to make me love seeing the characters succeed, and to hate seeing them suffer. The Utopia sequence in the final trial is legitimately the most I've cried at a game in a long time. I just wanted to see Sora be happy, but to know it's all fake and hanging out with all these characters is just a false reality. That just hit home for me for some reason. I really liked the cases. They made me think and they were fun to figure out alongside the characters. Some of my favorite cases being the 5th and surprisingly the 3rd, which is something that Danganronpa hasn't ever been able to do. These cases are mind-blowing and intense and they're fun to think through. The ending left me satisfied. It was amazing for the story, but it left a void, haha, get it, in my heart. I was like, what do I do now that I finished this amazing game? It left me wanting more, despite understanding and appreciating the complete story. I also enjoy the twists and turns that the story takes, not only in revealing the story to the player, but also how the plot itself twists. By that, I mean that despite Mikado being the mastermind, he's never fully in control. From the voids breaking from his plans to everything with Nikkei and Kinjo, it seems like a constant back and forth where Mikado is gaining and losing control of the situation. But by far, my favorite aspect of the game is the characters. From a design standpoint, these characters look like they would fit right in with the world of Danganronpa. I love the updated designs for the returning cast, but the new cast designs really take home the gold, my favorites being Mikado, Yoriko, and Setsuka. But their personalities are even better. There's not a single character in this game that I downright hate besides Yuri. Every single other character is compelling in their own ways, have great backstory, and are funny and add to their story in their own ways. My favorite characters are Nikkei, Mikado, Yoriko, and especially Sora. Sora in general really hit home for me. I really wanted her to be happy and live her life despite the actions that Akane Taria committed and despite the situation she found herself in. She deserves happiness and it made me suffer that she didn't truly get it. But what really makes these characters shine are the relationships between them as characters grow bonds and have different dynamics. I gushed about Sora and Yoriko in my playthrough, and they really haven't stopped rotating around my brain since I stopped playing, and I come up with constant ways that the two of them could be together post-canon. They're truly the girlfriends ever. I will complain that the game does do some queerbaiting, but the food we get for Sora x Yoriko is enough for me to keep shipping it despite the game itself going against me at times. Lineage clearly meant for there to be some romantic subtext between the two, even if they didn't commit to it at the end. It's canon to me. Either way, Yoriko was everything I wanted in an LGBTQ rep in a Danganronpa game outside of that, and she was honestly written so well. Of course, those two aren't the only good dynamics, and they don't even have to be romantic to be good. I enjoyed the dynamics between Yuki and Shinji, Emma and Kokoro, Hibiki and Setsuka, and Nikkei and Mikado. These characters really play off each other in general, and I really enjoy how they interacted, with those interactions becoming my favorite part of the game. All in all, Super Danganronpa No. 2, despite being developed by one person, somehow became my favorite video game this year. The characters, plot, and especially the character interactions are top-notch, and the game refines the Danganronpa formula into a unique and arguably better experience than the core Danganronpa series. Overall, it's just a really well-written game that makes one of my favorite gaming franchises even better, and for that, it is my favorite video game that I played in 2023. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next year.